Hello, welcome back to TARTLEcast with myself, Alexander McKing, and Jason Rigby. We are moving through this deep mind paper on symbols and AI because the totality of AI systems and our language and our thoughts, they bleed into this paper so much with everything that we do. And I think it's important that we continue to round this out and talk about it because of how applicable it is to everything around data. So,
yeah, and I want to get into the, because in the particular symbolic behavior, we're talking about behavior.
Mm-hmm.
We did the receptive, and I want to get into the constructive today.
Yeah, creating constructs.
Yeah, and I'm going to read the first sentence because I think it's so important. Constructive. A second trait of symbolic behavior is the ability to form new conventions by imposing new meaning on effectively arbitrary substrates.
So let's okay. How would I
I think the word is new conventions.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example of a new convention. Okay, this is fine. The Soviet Union collapsed. Okay. And then you get all these small Eastern, not even Eastern, I would say these smaller Russian provinces popping up. Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. But before it was all just USSR. But then after everyone in the Soviet Union said that's no longer a thing, and then the rest of the world recognized this new convention, political convention, that is no longer a thing, these people are like, we want our own independence here. And so now the thought, the behaviors and ideas around the meaning of this thing have changed that substrate of what the actual value and representation on a map is for what you say, this is Russia. So if Russia was a symbol, if the hammer and sickle, was a symbol of all these things put together, but then that symbol disappears, and now it just becomes that big old Russian star. I don't even know what the symbol of Russia is right now. Everybody has their own now convention for what that meaning is. And some people, in some substrates, some subgroups, may still look at as Russia as this big communist beast, right?
Or Germany still being Nazism.
Or Germany still being Nazism, right? So this it has those sort of conventions are still there in that mindset for a certain substrate that is saying, well, how do we define this? But those evolve over time.
Yeah, and it goes, they all work with amongst themselves. So the constructive works with the receptive. And it says this, whereas the previous behavioral trait, receptiveness, speaks to a system's ability to appreciate the meaning of a symbol that is imposed by someone else. Mm-hmm. This property refers to the dual ability to create a new symbol when doing so would be useful. And I think, the Russian flag looks totally different.
Yeah, no, and that's the point here. So even though I had an old convention that we were all receiving, it's this law. It's like a law of cause and effect at this point.
Right.
Okay, we've created a new symbol, a new meaning for this. Now, are you going to receive this new construct? So you have the creator and the receiver at this point, and that's what's happening here in this. It's taking on that dual nature of the symbol itself. So as we create a new symbol or refine something or refine its meaning, somebody in that substrate has to receive it for that new conventional definition of what this symbol actually means or represents.
Yeah, and I want to pull you away from that and push you into this direction.
Push, pull.
Yeah, exactly. They said this, one substantial benefit of engaging with symbols. So here's a substantial benefit of how our behavior, because we're talking about behavior, can engage with symbols, is that one can reduce the mental burden of thinking about a complex concept by denoting it with a symbol.
Yeah, that's correct. So radiation, let's think about this. Radiation is an albeit complex concept. It has half-life. Too much of it can kill you, but you can't see it, right? I mean, in some forms, right? Unless it's, Chenkov radiation or whatever it is, the blue one from inside of a nuclear power plant. But the idea here is that I'm going to represent a symbol for radiation, for this thing, right? It's this yellow symbol, and it's got these weird, rounded out bottom pyramids with the cut top, and the three are going to meet in the center. And then I have yellow opposing that. I know that that's radiation. I know that there's complexity around that something is generating it, right? And I don't have to know all the physics of it.
And that symbol, everyone in the world knows that symbol.
But it's a warning, right?
It doesn't matter what language you speak. If you're in Japan,
yeah,
that symbol is very important to them.
That's exactly right. Or if you think about the peace symbol, anti-proliferation of nuclear, weapons, that is a complex political concept, a concept around weapons technology, mutually assured destruction, the future of humanity, all baked into one specific thing. Oh, and it's also taking Elder Futharks, which is this Scandinavian, what do they call those things? Runes. You taking Scandinavian runes and you're putting that together into the symbol. So I have weapons, politics, Scandinavian elements, social and emotional and political underpinnings, all these things coming together, but represented in one symbol.
Well, you can also look at it in a constructive way of how many empires have used an eagle.
Yeah, think about
eagle. United States, Rome.
But what does it represent?
Germany has an eagle, right?
Yeah, well, and think about the ancient Egyptians.
I think Russians have an eagle.
Yeah, ancient Egyptians.
Yeah, exactly. But each of those, that one symbol means many different things.
Right, and it's developed over time. That convention,
yes.
The creator and the receiver have had sort of an interaction. But the complexity of that culture, so if I would recognize, what the hieroglyph might be for that eagle with the sun disk in it, right? I would know that this representation of the eagle as a symbol is one that is akin to Egyptian culture.
Right. And so here's the problem with AI, because the article's on AI.
Yeah, let's get back into big data, please.
Yeah, and the constructive side of things where AI has issues. Evidence for this behavioral trait is scarce in current AI research. While much of what we do comprises creating models that engage with the convention humans have already established, less work probes and models' capacity to construct new conventions by imposing meaning on our arbitrary substrates.
Yeah, so the reason it lacks is because there's been so little human input to work with this model for the AI to learn from. So remember I said in previous episodes, you need an infinite number of inputs because conventions change all the time. And I said that's the weakness of this model. Well, if you're going to continue to go down this path, then you would have to actually acquire all of this human input for all these people that have these conventions within these specific substrates to tell you how they define this specific thing. So then as that evolves with people and you're pulling those inputs in them into your data model, that can help that artificial intelligence algorithm actually figure out how those conventions change over time. Does a curve normalize? Is it chaotic? How does it evolve, right? Is it in a cancerous format? Like, what does that actually look like for the evolution of the thoughts around that symbol? It requires large amounts of input, and that's what they're saying is currently lacking.
Yeah, and they say this, evidence for this behavioral trait might instead look like the following. So they're talking about AI here. A model is asked a question, and when explaining its answer, it invents a new symbol to streamline or clarify its reasoning process of communication. So now I'm getting excited because now we're creating, the AI would create symbols.
So it's learned from past conventions. So this was it's learned from past conventions of how it's evolved.
Mm-hmm.
So it is like, okay, I remember everything in my life. And so I remember how these things changed. Now, when somebody asks me a question, I can then create a symbol that is representative of a complex concept because I've received all this input from so many human beings over such a long period of time that I know how they think and transform things. I can deliver them a symbol that they'll be like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
But don't you see that this is how, if this, I want to make sure I say this right. To me, this is the answer of AI bridging the gap with humans, of communicating.
This is communication with a machine.
And the machine, because you remember, what was it? Was it Contact or whatever, that one where the aliens came and they were doing all symbols?
Yeah, right here in New Mexico.
Yeah, they were it was all symbols, and it was changing, and then a new symbol would pop up and a new symbol pop out. And it
was a radio signal that put together a lot of symbols that ended up being a tesseract, and within that had a mathematical sequence to build a time machine. Great film.
But I mean, if AI could turn around and say, okay, we've collected all this data, we've collected all this knowledge and wisdom from humanity, there's all these little complex, because it can think greater than our mind in the sense of putting information together.
Not greater, quicker.
Quicker, yeah. Then why would it not create a language of symbols to be able to bridge our behavioral gaps?
It seems to me I got hieroglyphics
on the screen. That's what I'm getting at.
Were the Egyptians ahead of their time? Yeah. You know what I mean? They did build pyramids,
which we still can't do.
Yeah, which we still can't do. So
then they said number 2, agents cooperating on a team invent terminology so that they can communicate without exposing their strategy to their opponents.
Yeah, just think about football.
Yeah.
Or a guy, third base coach. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And he's standing there like doing weird hand stuff.
Yeah. And then you don't know what those are. Encryption,
blockchain technology.
The U-boats. Yeah. A model construction. This is number 3. A model construction algebra. Unalgebra. Would that be how you would say it?
And algebra.
Yeah. And algebra. And uses it to prove something meaningful.
That's a ridiculous sentence.
Yeah.
Model does what? Say that again.
A model constructs an algebra and uses it to prove something meaningful. We withhold knowledge of a particular mathematical concept and its associated symbol and see whether a model proposes a way to solve a problem that invokes the concept and symbol. So I see what they're doing. They're just testing it. They're just testing it to say, hey, will it come up with the same conclusion that we've already came up with?
That's all they want to know.
Yeah, that's a simple. And then, but see, here's the craziness of it. So now we're going to throw a mathematical concept, which, machine learning loves math. And here's where I want to get with you. You're deducing the behavior of humans down to an equation.
How can you say that we're that linear?
But do you see what I'm saying? The behavior, I was all on board with all of this. I love the idea of the language with the symbols. I love the idea of understanding reasoning processes. I love the idea of us exposing the strategy of the machine.
Remember how I said
by testing it?
It's too complex, and they're saying, well, if it's going to be so complex, we need to put it into a mathematical algorithm.
We always do this with everything.
Don't put me in a box to define who I am as a human being, and don't say that this math equation defines who I am and what I'm going to do next.
Well, here's the problem with it. Okay, so now we already know the outcome. We've judged the outcome, so now we're going to teach the machine and see so that we know if it's right or not.
I'm going to impose my judgment.
It's on the machine.
Am I good at judging people?
I think we're kind of fucked up in that, Alex. Look at the world right now.
No, I know. That's all it is. It's a system.
So why would I want to create something that can just think more fucked uply?
Yeah, like that's like your algebra sentence they've said on here. Yeah. But that's what it is. It's these consistent concepts of judgment.
Yes. And we want it to think faster, judging faster. AI
does not live in a world of self-definition.
No.
It's only judgment dependent on the algorithm of the human being that wrote the algorithm of judgment.
Until they develop consciousness, which I think they will be able to, but until they develop consciousness, they don't have the ability to be self-aware. And you can't create self-awareness through a mathematical formula.
No, it won't happen. And if you just look at it, that's why when we talk about these symbols, a symbol needs to stand alone. It cannot be judged or have a changing conventional value. Then it's not truly something that is resonant and representative that means the same thing everywhere.
Well, here's how I would put it at. The symbol's at the top of the pyramid. The symbol.
I like this pyramid.
And then from there, depending on, now we're going to create layers, depending on the culture, depending on the substrate, depending on the people, depending on this. Now that one symbol, that's the truth. Now it has all these different types of meanings.
Like distortions?
That correlate it. Yes, distortions. Yes, that correlate it. But the symbol does not change its meaning based off of a mathematical formula, which is like, because I see what they're saying. Well, if 80% of the people believe this way, then this must really mean what the symbol means. Why can't the symbol stand alone as its own? We're not going to change the ox on there based off of our limited interpretation of what an ox is.
Yeah.
Because an ox in India is totally different than an ox to us. An ox to us is, there's a nice steak. In India, it's an animal to be worshipped.
Yeah, exactly.
So that symbol means lots of different, I'm just picking that.
You know what that tells me? That tells me that that's not a truthful representation of what the symbol is.
Yeah.
If it's not standing alone and it means different things in different places, that's not really what it is.
Yes.
That couldn't be its definition then.
Yes.
That's the problem with this whole thing. And then to say that, listen, 1 + 2 = 3 somewhere.
Right.
Okay. And then you can go to another place and they say, okay, well, what about like -1 + 4?
Well, in different dimension, it has different, mathematicians are doing that.
Yeah. And then -1 + 4 = 3, but it's a different flavor of how we got to 3.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's only 3.
Yes.
If I show you the number 3, does that give you an emotional charge?
Yeah,
we all just know that the number 3 is the number 3.
I always want to make it affinity, though, if it's a 3.
No, I know.
I always want to put it together. 2 3s.
Yeah, the 8.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, though. That's the cool part about that part of math. When I look at numbers, they can stand alone.
Right.
They just are what they are.
But that's what I'm saying. A symbol is a symbol, and the symbol is the symbol. Period. That's a hieroglyphic. That's what it is. Period.
A human being is a human being. Period.
How I associate with that symbol, and the thought of that symbol is what creates my behavior.
That's correct. That's right. So it can stand alone, but how do myself, choose to then go interact with that standalone
and that's what
thing?
I'm saying. So if you taught AI to say, hey, this is the symbol, this is it, you can associate with an ox or whatever you want to associate it with, but this is the symbol. But the truth of the symbol is not based on humanity's thought of the symbol. The symbol stands alone. Just like 3 stands alone.
So don't try and define the symbol. Let it be its own thing. Let humanity decide for itself how it wants to go look at it, but keep them separate. They are standalone things. We're trying to put these two things together. Because
you're not going to, a symbol
People have a hard
is not
time
a problem. It's not a mathematical problem. A symbol is not a mathematical problem. A symbol's a symbol.
A person is not a mathematical problem.
Yes.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
It
Don't
just
tell
is what it
marketing
is.
that.
No, but the thing is, a human being is a human being. But then when we start to judge or say that it means one thing somewhere else, or because someone's a different skin color, that it has a different sort of value or substrate to it, how do you know?
Well,
how do you know that's true?
In India, is that wrong? Based on me being in the United States in Albuquerque, New Mexico, is that ox symbol how they believe that symbol? Are they wrong?
If they wrong?
Well, 80% of the world eats meat, but India.
Yeah, and if I'm
so they're wrong and we're right according to math.
Yeah, the math then says, oh, if over 51% says this, then that must be what it is. Paradox, wrong, false, not true. Nothing about it. This whole thing is so freaking contradictory. Just really refine your thoughts. Here we go. These people here writing this paper, have you even figured out who you are? Do you know how you represent something to yourself in your own thoughts? Even through your own data? Have you even looked at your own data?
Do you remember Hunger Games, the movies?
Yeah, of course.
In the whole series, and then each little section had its own symbol.
Yeah.
And then, when she raised the symbol, it's like the war raising the flag, Iwo Jima, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, right.
In times of, see, this is the beautiful part. We see humanity progressing and evolving through symbols. And that's how important they are. And I love that I love that people like this, brilliant. I mean, these people are way smarter than I am, are looking at symbols, and they're actually writing a paper on symbols, because a lot of people don't realize how important symbols is.
No.
But when we look at our evolution, symbols go right along with our evolution.
They always have
from
been.
then.
Yeah, from then.
Whether
to now.
we've devolved from there, I don't know.
Or we brought it into big data on a computer. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's always been there with us. And the question is, are you willing to look at that symbol and have some sort of experience with it? Are you willing to look at your data, look at yourself, have an experience with it?
So how could the AI have an experience with the symbol?
The AI can have an experience with the symbol when the AI has an experience with itself. The AI will never be able to define what a symbol is until the AI can truly know what the experience and how to define itself. We need to figure out what really defines us before we start saying what this thing is that stands alone essentially means, just through some sort of idea that we have.
And if we want to find out more about ourselves and take control of our free will with data, how do we do that?
You go to tartle.co, TARTLE.co, and you start to collect all of those things about you. Take that introspective look and find that value within it and evolve.